The massive alien warships hung in space like deadly jewels, their surfaces gleaming with an almost mirror-like perfection. Each Vorthak battlecruiser stretched over 2 kilometers long, their hulls crafted from some unknown crystalline material that seemed to bend light around its edges. They moved in perfect formation, maintaining exact distances from each other as if connected by invisible threads. It was a display of technological superiority meant to intimidate, and it worked on every species they had encountered before. Commander Ralvex stood tall on his command bridge, his 4 arms crossed behind his back as he gazed at the tactical hologram floating before him. His insectoid features showed clear amusement as he watched the human response approach their position. Through the display, he could see what could barely be called a fleet limping toward them at pathetic speeds. The human ships looked like they had been assembled in someone's backyard using spare parts and good intentions. "Look at this embarrassment," Ralvex chittered to his crew, his voice carrying the musical quality typical of his species. "They send us cargo haulers and mining equipment. Do they think this is some kind of joke?" The bridge crew erupted in nadir, clicking laughter, their mandibles chattering with genuine amusement. Some of the younger officers had never seen such primitive technology still functioning. The human vessels appeared to be held together with metal patches, external bracing, and what looked suspiciously like industrial tape in some places. Admiral Kim Minho pressed his weathered hands against the viewport of his flagship, the converted freight hauler, that now served as humanity's command vessel. The Resilience had once carried grain between Earth's agricultural colonies, but now bristled with salvaged weapon systems and improvised armor plating. Through the cracked transparent steel, he could see the alien formation in all its terrifying beauty. "Sir, they're broadcasting this engagement across their networks," reported Lieutenant Park Summon from the communication station. Her young face showed worry as she monitored the alien transmissions. "They're treating this like entertainment." Kim nodded grimly. He had expected as much. The aliens saw humanity as nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a primitive species, to be crushed for the amusement of their empire. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The human fleet consisted of 37 vessels, none of which had been built for war. There was the old mining ship, Iron Mountain, her hull scarred from decades of asteroid work. The passenger liner, New Hope, had been hastily converted with weapon mounts welded to her sides. Even the garbage scow, Scrapper, had been pressed into service, her massive cargo holds now filled with improvised explosives. Each ship told a story of human determination. When the Vorthak had demanded Earth's surrender, threatening to glass the planet if humanity didn't submit, the response had been immediate. Every captain who could get their ship moving had volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. They weren't soldiers or trained naval officers. They were farmers, miners, cargo haulers, and maintenance workers who had decided they would rather die fighting than live on their knees. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the lead alien vessel," called out the communications officer. Kim straightened his simple uniform, knowing this conversation would likely be his last. "Put it through." Commander Ralvex's image appeared on the main screen, his alien features twisted in what might have been a smile. "Human Commander, I am impressed that your species managed to gather so many functional vessels. We had expected perhaps 5 or 6 ships, not this collection." "We aim to surprise," Kim replied evenly. "Indeed you do. I must admit we are broadcasting this encounter throughout our empire. It has been some time since we encountered such quaint opposition. Your ships appear to be museum pieces." Kim could hear the barely contained laughter from the alien bridge. "Crew, these ships have served us well, Commander. They'll serve us well today, too. I admire your optimism, though it is misplaced. We will make this quick out of respect for your courage, however foolish it may be." The transmission ended, leaving Kim staring at his reflection in the dark screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. These weren't career military officers, but civilian volunteers who had learned their duties in the few weeks since the crisis began. They knew the odds, knew they were flying to their deaths, but not one had hesitated when asked to serve. The Vorthak continued their casual approach, their weapons charging with deliberate slowness. They wanted to savor this moment, to extract maximum entertainment from humanity's final stand. Their mistake was assuming that desperation made humans weak, when in reality it made them dangerous. The distance between the two fleets continued to shrink, but the Vorthak showed no signs of urgency. Their beautiful warships glided forward, in perfect synchronization, maintaining their ceremonial diamond formation as if they were participating in a parade rather than heading into battle. The aliens had used this same formation to crush dozens of civilizations, and they saw no reason to change tactics for what they considered to be scrap metal with engines. Commander Ralvex lounged in his command chair, occasionally glancing at the tactical display with the bored expression of someone watching a predictable movie for the 100th time. His energy shields hummed at barely 60% power, enough to stop any weapon the humans might possess while conserving energy for the victory celebration afterward. The plasma batteries throughout his fleet charged lazily, their operators taking their time as if they had all day to prepare. "Sir, should we increase shield strength?" asked one of his junior officers, a young Vorthak who had never seen actual combat. Ralvex waved a dismissive hand. "Why waste the energy? These primitives couldn't scratch our hulls even if we turned off our defenses completely. Keep the shields at minimum operational levels and save our power for the broadcast transmission afterward." The bridge crew chittered, with amusement at their commander's confidence. Several officers were already composing victory messages to send back to the homeworlds, describing how quickly they had dispatched the human pest. Meanwhile, aboard the mining ship Iron Will, Captain Lee Suna moved between her weapon stations with practiced efficiency. Her ship had spent 15 years chewing through asteroid fields, and her crew knew every bolt and wire in their vessel. The weapon systems they had installed were far from military grade, but they were built by people who understood how to make things work under impossible conditions. "Captain, their targeting systems are locking onto us," reported Chief Engineer Ko Daehyun from his jury-rigged tactical station. The big man had spent most of his life maintaining mining equipment in the harsh environment of space, and his hands moved confidently over controls that would have confused a trained naval officer. "Let them lock on," Lee replied calmly. "Remember what we practiced. When I give the word, everyone hits their emergency thrusters at the same time. Don't worry about the strain on the engines." Her crew nodded grimly. They had trained for this moment, pushing their old mining ship through maneuvers that would have been impossible for a purpose-built warship. The Iron Will wasn't fast or elegant, but she was tough and unpredictable. The first Vorthak volley came exactly as Admiral Kim had predicted. Brilliant plasma bolts lanced out from the alien fleet, each one precisely aimed at what their computers calculated were the most vulnerable points of the human ships. The aliens expected to see at least half the human fleet destroyed in this opening attack, clearing the way for a quick and decisive victory. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The moment the plasma bolts left the alien weapons, every human ship suddenly veered in a different direction. The Iron Will dove beneath the firing line while simultaneously rotating on her axis. The passenger liner, New Hope, executed a barrel roll that should have been impossible for a ship her size. The garbage scow scrapper fired her maneuvering thrusters in a sequence that sent her tumbling through space like a thrown dice. The Vorthak targeting computers, programmed to track ships that moved in logical, predictable patterns, completely lost their locks. Plasma bolts that should have found their targets instead streaked harmlessly through empty space, lighting up the void with brilliant but useless displays of energy. "What just happened?" Ralvex demanded, his casual confidence evaporating as he watched his perfect opening salvo accomplish absolutely nothing. "Sir, their ships are moving in completely random patterns," his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with confusion. "Our computers cannot predict their next moves because there appears to be no logic to their flight paths." What the aliens didn't understand was that chaos was exactly what the humans had trained for. Every captain in the human fleet had spent years dealing with equipment failures, emergency situations, and the constant need to improvise solutions to impossible problems. They knew their ships better than the aliens knew their own vessels, understanding exactly how far they could push their engines, their structural integrity, and their life support systems. Captain Lee Suna felt the Iron Will shudder as her thrusters fired in directions they were never designed to handle, but she knew her ship could take it. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the smooth coordination of people who had faced death together in the asteroid fields, where a single mistake could mean explosive decompression and a cold death in the vacuum of space. The Vorthak fleet tried to adjust, their perfect formation beginning to shift as individual captains attempted to target the wildly maneuvering human ships. But their rigid training and reliance on computer-assisted targeting worked against them when faced with opponents who fought like their lives depended on it. Because they did. The moment the Vorthak realized their opening attack had failed completely, the entire character of the battle shifted. What had started as a casual extermination became something far more serious and terrifying for the alien empire. The humans weren't just surviving, they were beginning to fight back in ways that defied every military textbook in the Vorthak database. Captain Park Jinwoo had spent 20 years cutting through the hardest asteroids in the outer system, and his ship Mountain Breaker carried the most powerful industrial cutting equipment humanity had ever built. While the Vorthak had designed their armor to deflect the broad-spectrum energy weapons typically used in space combat, they had never encountered the focused, precision cutting tools used in heavy mining operations. Target their engine sections, Park ordered his crew, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Same technique we used on the Ceres operation, but aim for their weakest structural points. The mining lasers that activated were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were industrial tools designed to slice through solid rock and metal ore with surgical precision. When the brilliant cutting beam struck the lead Vorthak cruiser, it didn't spread its energy across the hull like a normal weapon. Instead, it focused all its power into a beam narrower than a human finger, boring straight through the alien armor like it was made of paper. Commander Ralvex felt his flagship shudder as the human cutting beam punched completely through his ship's outer hull, severed 3 major power conduits, and emerged from the other side still at full strength. Emergency alarms began screaming throughout his vessel as atmosphere vented from the perfectly round hole that had appeared in what should have been impenetrable armor. "Damage report," he shouted, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Sir, they've cut straight through our primary power grid. We're losing main engines and our port weapon batteries are offline," his damage control officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. But the mining laser was just the beginning. As the human ships closed distance with the alien fleet, they began deploying clouds of small objects that the Vorthak sensors initially dismissed as debris. Only when thousands of these objects began moving with obvious intelligence did the aliens realize what they were facing. Every human ship carried maintenance drones, small robotic units designed to perform repairs in the vacuum of space. These weren't military hardware, just simple work robots equipped with cutting tools, welding equipment, and basic manipulation arms. But in the hands of desperate humans, they became something entirely different. Chief Petty Officer Yoon Minji controlled a swarm of 50 maintenance drones from her station aboard the cargo hauler, Endurance. She had been a drone operator for 12 years, guiding these small robots through countless repair operations on space stations and orbital platforms. Now she watched through their cameras as they swarmed over the hull of a Vorthak destroyer. Like metallic ants, concentrate on their sensor arrays and communication equipment, she instructed her team. Blind them first, then go for the weapon mounts. The maintenance drones went to work with their cutting tools, not trying to destroy the alien ship but systematically dismantling its most critical external systems. Sensor dishes were sliced away from their mounts, communication arrays were severed at their connection points, and weapon batteries found their targeting systems suddenly disconnected from their power sources. The Vorthak crew inside the destroyer could only watch helplessly as their ship was literally taken apart piece by robots small enough to fit in a storage locker. Their point defense systems, designed to stop missiles and fighter craft, couldn't target objects as small and numerous as the maintenance drones. What terrified the aliens even more was the complete unpredictability of human tactics. When Captain Choi Young-ho found his converted passenger liner, New Dawn, under heavy fire from 2 Vorthak cruisers, he did something that violated every principle of space combat. He began deliberately venting his ship's atmosphere through the cargo bay doors. The explosive decompression sent the New Dawn spinning wildly through space, but Choi had calculated the effect perfectly. The massive thrust from the venting atmosphere pushed his ship out of the aliens' targeting solution, while simultaneously accelerating him toward their formation at a speed his normal engines never could have achieved. But the humans weren't finished with their surprises. As the New Dawn hurtled toward the enemy formation, her cargo bay doors snapped shut and her real weapons activated. Captain Choi had loaded his cargo holds with shipping containers, but these weren't carrying grain or manufactured goods. Each container had been packed with mining explosives and fitted with simple guidance systems. "Launch cargo!" Choi ordered, and dozens of shipping containers shot out from his vessel like oversized bullets. The Vorthak point defense systems tried to intercept what appeared to be crude missiles, but the containers were too numerous and too irregularly shaped. Several struck alien hulls with devastating effect, their improvised explosive payloads tearing through armor that had been weakened by the earlier drone attacks. Admiral Kim Min-ho watched the battle unfold from his command center, coordinating what appeared to be complete chaos but was actually a carefully planned strategy. Every human captain was following a loose battle plan that allowed for maximum improvisation, while gradually herding the rigid Vorthak formation into an increasingly disadvantageous position. The aliens had expected a quick, clean victory against inferior opponents. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that turned every weakness into a strength, every piece of civilian equipment into a weapon, and every desperate moment into an opportunity for innovation that their advanced computers simply couldn't predict or counter. Captain Cho Mirei had volunteered for this mission knowing she would never see Earth again. The Last Stand had been a garbage collection vessel for 15 years, hauling waste from orbital stations and asteroid mining operations. Her crew of 8 had been sanitation workers, not soldiers, but when humanity's survival was at stake, ordinary people had stepped forward to do extraordinary things. "Captain, we're receiving multiple targeting locks from the flagship," reported her navigator Kim Taeyang, his voice steady despite the terror they all felt. The young man had been collecting space garbage just 3 months ago. Now he was guiding a ship packed with enough explosives to level a city directly toward the most powerful warship in the Vorthak fleet. Mirei checked her instruments one final time. The cargo holds of her ship contained over 200 tons of mining explosives, industrial cutting charges, and every piece of volatile material they could safely transport. It wasn't sophisticated military hardware, just the crude but effective tools that human miners use to break apart asteroids. She had welded the detonators together herself, using techniques learned from 20 years of maintaining waste processing equipment. "All stations, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's intercom. "You all know why we're here. My family is on Earth and yours are too. We're going to make sure they stay safe." The Vorthak flagship loomed ahead of them, its crystalline hull gleaming with energy shields that could deflect the most advanced plasma weapons in the galaxy. Commander Ralvex had positioned his command ship at the center of his formation, protected by layers of smaller vessels and automated defense systems. The flagship was supposed to be untouchable, a symbol of Vorthak technological superiority that had never been seriously threatened in over a century of conquest. But the aliens had made a critical error in their understanding of human nature. They assumed that any intelligent species would value self-preservation above all else, that faced with overwhelming odds, rational beings would surrender rather than throw their lives away in futile gestures. They had never encountered a species that considered sacrifice for others to be the highest form of rational behavior. "Sir, the garbage vessel is accelerating directly toward us," reported Ralvex's tactical officer, his voice showing the first hints of genuine concern. "Should we target it with our main batteries?" Ralvex studied his display with growing unease. The battle was not going according to plan. His perfect fleet was being systematically dismantled by humans using tactics that made no logical sense. Mining equipment was carving through his best armor, maintenance drones were disabling his most advanced weapons, and now a garbage scow was charging directly at his flagship like some primitive kamikaze attack. "Target that vessel and destroy it immediately," he ordered. "I want it vaporized before it gets within 10 kilometers of us." The flagship's massive plasma cannons swiveled toward the approaching Last Stand, their energy output enough to reduce a small moon to glowing particles. But as the weapons charged, Captain Mirai activated systems that the Vorthak computers had never encountered before. Human ships had always carried electronic warfare equipment, but it was civilian-grade hardware designed for navigation and communication, not military applications. However, the humans had discovered something the Vorthak had never expected. Their advanced shielding systems, designed to stop sophisticated energy weapons, were completely vulnerable to crude electronic interference that operated on entirely different principles. Chief Engineer Song Jiwon had spent his entire career fixing broken electronics on garbage haulers, learning to jury-rig solutions with whatever parts were available. The electronic warfare system he had cobbled together from old navigation computers and communication arrays looked like it belonged in a scrapyard, but it worked in ways that would have amazed military engineers. Activating signal jammers now, Song reported, his hands flying over controls that were held together with industrial tape and determination. The electronic noise that erupted from the last stand was like nothing in the Vorthak military database. It wasn't a clean, focused signal designed to overwhelm specific systems. Instead, it was a chaotic mixture of civilian radio frequencies, navigation beacons, and industrial control signals that created interference patterns the alien computers simply couldn't filter out. Commander Ralvex watched in horror as his targeting systems began displaying impossible readings. His weapons showed targets in locations where nothing existed, while completely losing track of the garbage scow that was now less than 5 kilometers away and closing fast. "Sir, our targeting computers are malfunctioning," his weapons officer reported, mandibles clicking with panic. "We cannot achieve a firing lock on the human vessel." The Vorthak had built their entire military doctrine around precision and technological superiority. Their weapons were incredibly advanced, but they required exact targeting data to function properly. When faced with electronic chaos that their computers couldn't interpret, their most powerful weapons became useless. Captain Mirai felt the last stand shudder as Vorthak point defense systems tried desperately to stop her approach, but the IDER small automated guns couldn't generate enough firepower to destroy her ship before impact. She could see the alien flagship growing larger in her viewport, its beautiful crystalline surface about to become ground zero for an explosion that would be visible from Earth. "All hands prepare for impact," she announced calmly. Around her, her crew of former garbage collectors and maintenance workers strapped themselves into their stations, each one knowing they were about to become part of something that would be remembered for as long as humanity existed. The collision came with tremendous force, the last stand punching through the Vorthak flagship's energy shields like they were made of paper. The ship's reinforced hull, designed to withstand impacts with space debris, carved deep into the alien vessel's core before the explosives detonated in a blast that lit up the entire battlefield. The explosion that consumed Captain Cho Mirai and the Vorthak flagship created a brilliant flash of light that could be seen across the entire solar system. When the glare faded, a massive debris field drifted where the alien command ship had been just moments before. Twisted metal, crystalline fragments, and the scattered remains of what had once been the pride of the Vorthak fleet now tumbled slowly through the vacuum of space. Admiral Kim Minho stood on the bridge of the Resilience, his uniform torn and bloodstained from when a console had exploded near his position. Around him, emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow as his crew worked frantically to keep their battered ship operational. Through the cracked viewport, he could see the aftermath of a battle that nobody had expected humanity to survive, let alone win. "Damage report," he called out, his voice hoarse from shouting orders through the chaos of combat. Lieutenant Park So-min looked up from her station, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes bright with disbelief. "Sir, we've lost 8 ships total. The Mountain Breaker, Iron Will, and New Dawn are heavily damaged but still operational. Most of our fleet is running on backup power and emergency life support." Kim nodded grimly. The human losses had been severe, but they had achieved something that would have been considered impossible just hours earlier. The remaining Vorthak ships were in full retreat, their perfect formation shattered beyond repair. Without their flagship and command structure, the alien fleet had lost all coordination and was fleeing in panic toward the edge of the solar system. Throughout the remaining human vessels, crews were discovering the true extent of their victory. Captain Park Jinwoo aboard the Mountain Breaker watched through his mining ship's external cameras as Vorthak destroyers fired their engines at maximum burn, desperate to escape the system that was supposed to have been an easy conquest. His industrial cutting lasers had carved through 5 enemy vessels, proving that human ingenuity could overcome technological superiority. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 damaged Vorthak ships," reported Communications Officer Yi Li Byung-ho from the Endurance. The young man could barely believe what he was saying. Just that morning, the idea of alien surrender would have been unthinkable. Kim considered the situation carefully. The surrendering aliens were trapped in disabled vessels, their crews facing slow death as their life support systems failed. Despite everything the Vorthak had planned to do to Earth, Kim felt no satisfaction in watching them suffer. Signal. Our rescue ships to assist them. We're not monsters. The decision to help their defeated enemies would become one of the defining moments of first contact between humanity and the wider galaxy. While other species had met Vorthak aggression with either submission or their own brutality, humans had responded with violence when necessary, but mercy when possible. As news of the battle began spreading through subspace communication networks, the implications became clear to military analysts across dozens of worlds. The Vorthak Empire had been stopped not by a technologically superior force, but by a species that refused to accept the rules of conventional warfare. Humans had turned garbage scows into weapons, mining equipment into military hardware, and maintenance drones into assault units. Captain Lee Suna, commanding the damaged but still functional Iron Will, received the first communication from an alien species other than the Vorthak. The Centaurian Republic, longtime enemies of the Vorthak Empire, sent a message of congratulations and an immediate offer of alliance. Within hours, similar messages were arriving from across the galaxy as word spread of humanity's impossible victory. "Admiral, you need to see this," called out the communications officer, his voice filled with amazement. "We're receiving messages from 17 different species. They all want to establish diplomatic contact with Earth." Kim smiled for the first time since the battle began. Humanity had fought to survive, but in winning, they had gained something far more valuable than military victory. They had earned respect from civilizations that had considered them primitive just days earlier. The true measure of human success became apparent over the following weeks, as intelligence reports filtered in from across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire, which had conquered dozens of worlds through technological intimidation, found their expansion halted as potential victims realized that the seemingly invincible aliens could be defeated. Species that had lived in fear of Vorthak aggression began forming alliances and developing new defensive strategies based on human tactics. In the months that followed, Earth received its first official visitors from the galactic community. The delegation included representatives from species that had been fighting the Vorthak for centuries, all eager to learn how humans had achieved their victory with such primitive equipment. They were particularly interested in the human concept of adaptive improvisation, the ability to turn any available resource into a solution for immediate problems. Admiral Kim found himself appointed as Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community, a role he had never expected to hold. During his first address to the Galactic Council, he explained the human philosophy that had made their victory possible. "We don't see weaknesses, we see opportunities. We don't see impossible odds, we see challenges to overcome. And we never ever give up when the people we love are in danger." The galaxy had learned that humanity was not just another species to be conquered or ignored. They were survivors, innovators, and warriors who could turn anything into a weapon when necessary. More importantly, they were also capable of mercy, diplomacy, and cooperation when given the chance.